The Court of Public Opinion is a part of the amateur radio network. This topic may be sensitive to certain audience. In this documentary I was watching regarding the abuse of the elderly and the handicapped is a real sore spot. And if you're one of those people that have a real experience or have lived through something like this, my deepest condolences to anyone that would ever suffer because of the ignorant people that, operate our, what so-called institutions. There's such a scripture in the Bible that, that Jesus came to set the captives free. And I've witnessed several mentally ill individuals die. Lack of care, neglect, and there's no reason for it because of the twisted thinking on the part of those who engage in that. They have no authority over these people, and haven't worked and lived around it or survived it, literally. That no one is allowed to have this kind of access to the handicapped the way they do, but they do, okay? And they steal off of them. I've seen several situations in my personal experience where these agencies, they cloak themselves as agencies to help the mentally ill, and they're stealing their SSI money. And that's actually against the law, according to the State Attorney General's office. And there's so many crimes like this that are being committed in these agencies and these so-called health workers that go around, and there's so many HIPAA privacy issues with it too, as well, is that somebody is given access to medical records and discusses somebody's medical care without the consent of the patient. I mean, I could go on and on how many patient issues there are. We've switched everything over, like when I was an assistant, you switch everything over to electronic records. Sure, you have access to those things, but if you're working in a medical records department, you know the guidelines in the HIPAA Privacy Act, and that applies to every person. That applies to your own children, it applies to your family. That's a rule across the board. And I used to be like one of those people said that HIPAA privacy could run into problems, but here's the thing. Without that HIPAA privacy, you end up in a situation where people end up institutionalizing people. And a lot of times what ends up happening is these people are forced into psychiatric care. And the people that are forcing them to psychiatric care don't even know what they're getting themselves into. I've seen some people who wrote up trumped up charges and false charges, and it ends up becoming a false imprisonment case. It's no different than somebody taking 3 kids and taking them hostage. It's no different. You taking somebody hostage because they have a disability. I mean, when it happened to the society that used to care for its young and ignored the ill and the elderly and the children that are abandoned and orphaned, I mean, what kind of people in our society have gotten to the point where they think they're better people than, I mean, you're looking at law enforcement, how they make jokes and make laughs, and they take cheap shots at elderly and handicapped people. I mean, what kind of society of men do this? And they go out and get drunk and screw every girl on the corner and ask these girls to come over and have sex with them in their squad car. I mean, I've seen it. I also see a handful of cops that have to work around guys like this. I mean, it jeopardizes everybody. It's these senseless crimes are so hard to talk about. But if we can get to the place where people can actually talk about the senseless crimes that are done because somebody has a badge and a license to do it. And there's so much criminal activity that, honestly, the crime of, let's just take an example in more extreme cases. You got somebody that's been in prison due to like a real crime, right? The crime isn't the mental illness. It may be a symptom of the problem, but the crime is not the mental illness. And we got, they talk about stigmatism, but they don't talk about that a handicap might not even really be a mentally handicapped. And you talk about a victim that's been abused, and then somebody goes over and out of their way to re-traumatize them. That is what we mean by TI. That's how desperate our society has gotten, because they can steal off somebody with their SSI check, They could, and that's why the Social Security has restrictions. There are so many things going on with stealing somebody's money. It happened to me last year. Somebody stole my bank card. But I don't know why the SSI didn't jump in and do more about it. But, you know, some of us have handicaps, you know, and we've been victims of being robbed. We've been victims of senseless harassment, and I mean harassment, by people who have no position, have no authority to be harassing anybody, especially because they have a criminal record. And we're not talking about a light criminal record. I mean, a history of abuse. Okay, that's why Social Security steps in and says, we got to monitor these people because they have a history of abuse. They don't just give anybody access to this. And unfortunately, it does happen. And it happens too much. And some people, they take advantage of them. And I really, really hate to say it, but the more outspoken we get about the abuse of the handicap and the elderly, I'd say more attention's going in. I mean, I went through a difficult fingerprinting process because of the absolute abuse of the elderly. Because, I mean, nowadays, there, you know, to me, the crimes that are being committed, they're being committed against the weakest people. And then you want to talk about the abortion issue? I mean, from the womb to death, from the womb to the grave, it's a constant struggle. I don't know where you find yourself, and you might have got sucked into something or got caught up in something. I hope you take the time to really think about the crimes that are being committed, because I personally don't have the energy to even, I mean, you don't spend your life looking for everybody and pick a fight, but these people are the ones that start the problem. The responsibility belongs on the people that are perpetrating these crimes against the elderly and the handicapped. And, you know, when you talk about prison ministry and people that get involved in helping individuals, a human rights issue, it's immoral, it's unethical on every level. And, you know, I mean, we talk about this stuff on a regular basis, the senseless, mean jokes. And you know, most of these people that run these programs actually had to go to school and get a diploma and degree for this. And they don't have the ability to have the capacity for common sense. I mean, you work you have to have the right heart and mind to work in healthcare. You have to have compassion. And when you're working with people, okay, we know it's a lot and it's exhausting. Then step away from your job, okay? Go give your job to some young person who has the ability to have compassion. If you've got to the point where you no longer have compassion for other people, it's time to move on. You know what I mean? And we grew up where a police officer was there to serve and protect, not serve and abuse, okay? And I see police officers that do this, okay? And we watch it, okay? There's plenty of people to talk about it. We're just putting a voice to it, you know? But I know there's law enforcement that don't want to be around these type of law enforcement. I know teachers don't want to be around teachers like this. They have ethics. They have values. They care about people. And they're not afraid to say it, okay? But to me, I don't see why these people stay in their jobs if they think they're an asset when they're actually hurting everyone around them, because they're abusive to the patients and the clients. Sadly, they pretend they have good causes and they seem to be friendly people, but I don't know if I would want to live with somebody that goes out of their way to be abusive and critical of somebody. I mean, who in the world wants to live this way? Well, that's why we're putting a voice to it. I hope you guys watch the documentary below. I mean, I would caution you. I mean, this is, when we're talking about mentally ill, they've incarcerated most of the mentally ill, and they treat them like common criminals, and most of them are victims of the crime of just being a handicapped person. Little did we know that it was a crime to be handicapped. Little did we know that there's going to be people that are mentally challenged. I mean, with a population of autistic children, I mean, are we going to send everybody into a prison system? I mean, I don't think that's the way the world really operates, but that's what it looks like. The Court of Public Opinion is a part of the Amateur Radio Network.